Hello my fellow freedom builders, and welcome back to the channel and to a very special video today. This is not directly regarding stocks and investing, and yet it actually is, because what is happening right now is of very high interest to us as investors. Now, I do apologize right away for making a video where war and economy and investing is combined together. I know it can sound very cynical or very cold, but we just must admit that the war in Ukraine and all what is happening in that region has had an immense effect on the financial markets. So therefore, when something really huge is happening, then I think it is in the right place to address it. So I do apologize up front if someone thinks that war and the entire Ukraine-Russia situation is not directly related to investments, but I can guarantee you that it is. Because when the war started, we saw a spike in oil prices, gas prices, corn, wheat, fertilizer, everything, and it has been a big catalyzer in boosting the inflation in the Western world. So, if the war somehow could come to an end, that would be huge for the investment markets. Now, what is happening right now? Well, if you have been following the situation a bit over the last month, you have seen this guy here, Prigozhin. He's the leader of the so-called Wagner Group that has around 25,000 highly skilled and trained soldiers under his command. They were the ones that succeeded taking Bakhmut in Ukraine. They have also helped, it is a private mercenary army basically, they have helped Russia in Syria and all over the world basically, where Russia didn't want to be directly related to some sort of conflict. They have hired Wagner to go in there, and Russia could say, well, it's not really us, it's Wagner, and so on. But right now, Prigozhin, or the last couple of months, he has been a huge critic of Putin. Not so much Putin actually, but more the Minister of Defense and the war generals and so in the Russian army. So he has been criticizing, and if you know something about Russia, it is that such critique is not very welcome. So he has been a larger and larger opponent to Putin. And what is happening right now is actually he is taking his 25,000 men and he is marching towards Moscow saying, oh, this is not a coup, this is not an uprising, this is not a civil war. It's a, what is he call it, a freedom march or something like that. But this is basically a coup in Russia. This is huge. You can see Russian mercenary chief says his forces are rebelling to oust the defense minister. We can see on CNN, Wagner insurrection plunges Russia into uncertainty. Here's what you need to know. I'll put the links below the video, but basically this is one of the largest things that has happened this year in the Ukrainian war. Definitely. Now, looking at the war map here, we can see, if we zoom out a bit, we can see Ukraine here. And of course, this red-pink area is where Russia has, well, these two eastern regions are the ones that Russia have been in for a while, and there have been some war for years here between Ukraine and these regions. Then there's this area down here, there's Kherson that Ukraine took back. And of course down here we have Crimea that Russia took in 2014 without much protest from the West. Alright, so what has happened now? Well, down here in Rostov, we see there is the logistic hotspot for the entire Russian war into Ukraine here. You can see it's a very good and central place for sending troops and material into this area. However, it seems like the Wagner Group have taken control of this. And when we follow out here, we can see the news, what is happening. I'll put a link to this as well below the video. But what is noteworthy here, if I could figure out how to zoom out, is that up here we have Moscow. And this one, this red line, is a highway going directly from Rostov, where Wagner started this uprising, towards Moscow. And they are moving in that direction right now. If we are seeing up here, we can just follow the news. We can see this one. Now this is 3 minutes ago. It's not entirely 3 minutes ago, but Russian tactical aviation bombing Wagner troops with FAB unguided bombs, whatever that is. That is here. So they have either moved their forces upwards, or there were some Wagner groups in this area. We can also see that Wagner PMC captured all facilities in Voronezh, I think it is pronounced. And if we are finding that somewhere, that must be here. That's really up here to the north of this area. We can see down here, an hour ago, 180 Russian border guards are surrendered to PMC Wagner. So this is really happening. Now, why are we interested in this? Well, when we're looking at the war overall, there's no doubt that Russia is in over their heads. This is an extremely dire situation. They have 250,000 people almost that are killed or at least wounded, so they can't attend the war. They have lost something like 4,000 tanks. They have lost thousands and thousands of other equipments. They have lost 300 helicopters. And these are just the conservative numbers. The Ukrainian numbers are reporting even higher, but this is a disaster for Russia. I think everyone except Russia and maybe Belarus and a couple of other trolls can agree on this. So what is happening here? Well, this basically, if you ask me, this could give Putin a way out of the war without losing too much face. Because what he basically can do now, it's not certain that it happens, but his army is down here, and it's not well equipped, it's not well trained, it's basically a disaster. They are losing men and equipment left and right. So what he can do now is he can say, well, fellow Russians, we have now defeated the Nazi drug addicts, or whatever he's calling the Ukrainians down here. We have defeated them, but now we have this traitor Prigozhin, and he's going for Moscow. So we are basically withdrawing our army from a lot of the Ukrainian territory, maybe moving some of it down here to protect the border down to Crimea, because they really want to keep that. I'm not sure it'll end up that way, but let's see. So he can basically withdraw his army and say, well, we got what we came for in Ukraine. Right now we need to defeat Prigozhin. I'm not sure this is what will happen, but it is a potential way out. You could even go into complete conspiracy mode and say that Putin and Prigozhin might be in some sort of collaboration to give Putin an excuse to pull out of Ukraine. I'm not sure about that. That's really far-fetched. But this is definitely, and dare I say, interesting situation. I know when we're talking about war and casualties and human lives, this is a real disaster and tragedy. But from a war perspective, and actually also a peace perspective, this could be the best thing, in my opinion, that has happened for a really long time. It also kind of get NATO off the hook, because right now it is on Russian national territory. NATO, or at least NATO weapons, can just flow into Ukraine now, but no soldiers, of course, no boots on the ground. And if the conflict could be moved to within the Russian borders, it would take a lot of the tension off. So what will happen? Well, no one knows. I'm following it basically minute by minute right now, and this is both from an expected perspective, and it is from a, well, basically just a geopolitical interest. We can see now what is happening. We can see Putin and Lukashenko had a phone call. We can see M2 highway has been closed from Tula regions in both directions. That is up here, I guess. Where do we have the signs? Well, we can't really see the signs right now. But I'm not too much into Russian geography, I must admit. But this is the highway where the fighting will come. Prigozhin have urged the Russian population to join him in this, I think he called it a peace march or something like that. And they actually hacked a lot of the local Russian TV channels so that Prigozhin could come out with his statements. So right now, really intense in Russia. I urge you to follow it on the news and try to watch it in a perspective where you consider the possibility of Russia actually ending the war, or at least withdrawing from some huge areas simply to get some more troops back into Russia where the trouble is. Just a quick note, we saw up in the north, was it up here? Let me see, where was it? It was up in the Belgorod Oblast up here. We saw these Russian freedom fighters a week or two ago. They were coming from Ukraine territory, but they were 100, 200 men, and they could actually take a huge chunk of Russian territory, and Russian soldiers could not really defend, so they could actually move quite undisturbed into Russian territory. That was just a few hundred men that was ill-equipped. Now we have 25,000 of the best soldiers that are actually available in Russia. When they took the Rostov region down here, as I said, this is the logistical hub of the entire war here. So they have probably taken over a ton of equipment down here. And rumor says that they have already shot down 1 or 2 Russian helicopters with some ground-to-air missiles. So what is happening? Is this a civil war in Russia? Is it a peace march? Where will it end? I don't know. But I can guarantee you that if the markets, the investment, the financial markets are starting to smell a bit of relief, a bit of idea that at least some of Ukraine will be freed, that the peace between Ukraine and Russia is moving closer, then I can guarantee you that no matter what happens in Russia and the tragedy for the population in Russia, then I can guarantee you that the financial markets will be relieved if they can see this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, or at least a lot of NATO equipment in Russia will soon be over. But let's see what happens. If something major happens, I'll make a new video. I'll also make the update video about my swing trading and option trading and so on. That might be later today, or it might be tomorrow, Sunday. I just thought you should have the latest news here. Alright, that's all for now. Take care of yourself and your money out there, and I'll speak to you again shortly. Bye.